He had transitioned from Hollywood celebrity to cleaner by the time of his death in 1992. Restrooms to survive. His spouse had found more than 200 tablets concealed in all throughout their house. His kid is at last disclosing today what the cameras never captured. Appeared. He was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, on September 4, 1928, at a time while the nation was still recovering from the effects of the Great Depression, his with whatever sales job he could find. His father Bernard struggled to keep things together, while his mother Betty, to keep the lights on. They patched clothing and finally launched a tiny beauty shop. But throughout all of this adversity, something odd was taking place, something nobody anticipated. An individual who was Catholic Dick's parochial school nun saw that the boy was peculiar, not in his actions, but in the manner in which his voice had an unnatural rhythm, richness, and sharpness on that dilapidated Midwestern community. She drew him aside and offered him a transformative item. Everything. She urged him to talk because she believed to act as though his voice were an instrument. Fire was ignited by the spark. When Dick was 10 years old, the family moved to Chicago and stopped pursuing their aspirations. Their goal was to survive. However, Chicago ended up being the best accident that could have happened. There was life in the city. With voices. Each kitchen was filled with humming radios. Dick, who was seated beside them, absorbing each word as if it were gospel. He listened to more than just Molly and Fibber McGee. He took in until the voices became a part of his own. He imitated them and lived inside their cadence. Additionally, at the age of 15, he wasn't only a child with a pastime. He provided the main voice of a nationwide subs radio program. The boy from Brewster. He's replicating radio stars from a small space one day. Apartment the next. He's the one that other children are attempting to emulate. He wasn't the Joey Brewster first. Before him, 2 others had performed the part. But when Dick took over, something clicked. To the microphone. His tone, his timing, and the way he transformed commonplace words and it wasn't practice. There was more to it. The performance lasted for supported by Quaker Oats and aired in millions of households throughout the years. Dick York, a Chicago youngster from a low-income home, became well-known overnight. Prior to his high school graduation. However, the fact that he was earning money didn't imply that the funds persisted. For too long the Yerks had barely survived to feel secure. Bernard continued to struggle with sales. Food was still scarce on certain days, and the rent was not certain. Dick took on any jobs he could, although he was unwinding since he had witnessed what occurs when the money stops. He never forgot. He didn't evict anybody for non-payment of rent when he was a property owner years later. Even though it was draining him, he continued to let them stay. He simply couldn't get over the sensation of nearly losing everything. Money wasn't the only factor that affected his early years. Or scripts for radio. Everything nearly came to a halt at one point. According to some accounts, he had polio in his youth. Others are less specific. It is evident, however, that Dick York did not emerge from those years unharmed. He was weak in ways that failed to appear. The actual blow occurred on a film set later in 1959, pushing a handcar to go with Gary Cooper, and they arrived at Cordera. Something ripped within him. Thethy back muscles on the right side. They simply broke. Later on, he would say that was the start of his decline into chronic pain. The use of medicines and never completely recover from. However, the seeds of that vulnerability had existed for a long time. The exact beginning of his radio career is a matter of some debate. Others, including some buried, claim 15, but according to interviews, he was just 13 years old in 1941. He was too young. In any case, Tobe, bearing the burden of a national program, but he did. He held it for. And fame wasn't the only factor. His family was brought out of poverty by that payday. Desperation. When some evenings required foregoing dinner, York's radio food is placed on the table by checks. Then everything fell apart. Not due to ratings, because of politics, not because of talent. In 1945, the creators of the show, Owen Vincent and Pauline Hopkins, were charged with having communist sympathies. In the early stages of the Cold War, paranoia was popular. They had been providing assistance to Nazis were opposed by communist forces, and that was sufficient. The ad firm informed Dick to put oneself at a distance. He was 17. He had the option to continue working, but he chose not to. Two was with them, but he later claimed that he didn't understand what it was all about. That loyalty cost him the position. The program was recast, repackaged, and continued without. He didn't stop though. He played Billy with All-American Jack Armstrong for 6 years. Fairfield persisted. Consistent work, known scripts, repetition brings comfort. Additionally, he appeared on programs like Grand Marquis, Meet the hundreds of episodes of Meeks, My True Story, and dozens more. Somewhere along the line, he created about 400 distinct character voices, ranging from rough and tumble, elderly men, to dreamy children. It was no longer merely acting. Vocal architecture was the term. And between takes on one of those sets, he got to know a teenage commercial reader named Joan Alt. She was 17 years old. His age was 23. He was despised by her parents, claimed to be broke, claimed to be a nobody. declared that they would have him arrested. So they did what young people do when they fall in love. They took off running. Drove to it was 2 in the morning in Rockford, Illinois. Gave a justice of the peace $5. Secretly wed. The gossip sections were having a great time. Her father disowned her. Her days passed while her mother wept. Dick simply held her hand during it. Everything next came television. His debut appearance was on the NBC horror anthology Lights Out in 1950. The Man Who Couldn't Die was the title of the episode. York gave an 8-minute discourse about eternal existence that was captured live and without interruptions. His performance poped fans to the point where NBC received 47 complaints. She was cursed by one woman. For a week, the husband was unable to sleep. The network adored it. Critics did the same. Bayhue was cast with Gene Kelly in Going My Way in 1952, earning $750 per episode. It wasn't smooth though. The Catholic advisors on the network detested his. He argued with them and almost lost his job because of a joke about confession. Kelly saved him one more. However, York's defiance of rigid scripts caused producers to. He needed to reshoot his scenes. Directors voiced their displeasure. He was getting a reputation for being difficult to control, not for doing poor job. That standing worsened following the 1953 failure of a test project dubbed The Marriage. He appeared too young to be a husband, according to executives. Then, as a joke, they passed along his audition tape about studios as something to avoid. York was unaware till he arrived at auditions, but before he could read a line, he was told no. It destroyed him. He spent 6 months without employment. His career almost terminated as a result of the humiliation. Then The Jack appeared, 1954's Benny program. He played a hitchhiker in front of 20 million viewers. He had a sense of humor. Very amusing. Too amusing. During rehearsal, Benny lost it when York's ad-libs became more chuckles more than his own words. "This show belongs to me," Benny yelled. York was destroyed. Up to 3 minutes. Their business connection ended at that point, and the beginning of one more blacklist. Dick York was not expected to be the best at the age of 27. Norton, a town full with Cuners and Charmers, yet he did. 3 tryouts later, he defeated 200 other applicants, including Tony Curtis, who was on the rise, to land a part in Someone Stole My Gal, produced by Universal Pictures. The studio took a chance. The image shows $850,000. Dick received $15,000 and 3 songs. 2 days in the studio to record them, and a lengthy kiss tune. However, it took 14 takes for that 18-second kiss. Additionally, somewhere around the middle they were photographed eating lunch together. With it, the tabloids ran, rumors flew. The box office saw a 23% surge. Fred McMurray even appeared on the set. Twice, merely observing. After all was said and done, the movie made $2.1 million. Dick's weekly fan mail increased from 0 to 400 letters. Additionally, Hollywood had a new romantic interest. Hollywood, however, doesn't remain docile for very long. A year later, on the 7th stage, at the pursuit sequence for The Naked Street at Republic Studios ended in a near-death experience. Moment. Only 4 feet from York. A prop dynamite explosion intended to dazzle exploded. Actual black powder. The timing was off. Metal in cheek burnt. Both eyebrows, Gwyneth face, 23 stitches deep. Farley Granger, the co-star, was completely stunned that the studio lost $75,000 due to delays. York submitted a $12,500 assertion, but that day, something more enduring came into his life: codeine, demoralizing, and painkillers. A drama in a circus, airborne stunts. He completed them all, taking medicines while having a damaged spine in between takes. The shaky hands and sloping board he was holding were invisible to the audience that used to lie flat backstage. They witnessed a trapeze performer. They witnessed dedication. They did not witness the start of the end. Lover Comeback was intended by 1961 to be light-hearted romantic nonsense with Rock Hudson and Doris Day. However, beneath the smile, York was taking as much as 20 Vicodins every day. He almost passed out while being kissed. Seen throughout the day. The incident was concealed by the studio. He had already started to get smaller. From his initial 61 stooped, decaying. Pills were the conclusion of every day. Each scene weighed more than the previous one. The Wheeler Dealers followed in 1963. Another bar brawl, another injury, another comedy. No double stunt, no. York let out a scream, the real kind, not the staged type. The crew stopped. A medic was called. His back could no longer be fixed. Nevertheless, he persisted. The allure persisted. The bones didn't. The state fair ought to have been easy. Rather, scandal sprung out. 1962. There were rumors of his romance with Anne Margaret, age 21. Pictures were leaked. Rooms in hotels. Hands held as well. MGM fumbled. Since 1951, York and Joan Alt had been wed. They were almost bankrupted by the controversy. The distinction between impulse and intention was muddled by his medicines. In public, chaos, quiet, and secluded. It was the start of his image breaking apart. The Hook went black later that year, a movie about carrying out a P during the Korean War. York portrayed the soldier who was unable to fire. Vulnerability was requested by the script, perhaps too much. In order to continue, he sought therapy during the filming process. It was his final major motion picture role. The film was a failure. It caused his body to tank. However, he wasn't finished with television. From 1957 to 1963, York made 7 appearances on the presence of Alfred Hitchcock. Crime, suspicion, and nefarious intentions. He was perfect, every one of them. Notable was the 12-hour caper. Bonds worth $500,000 was stolen. York as a clever embezzler. IMDb rating of 7.8 stars. Nobody was aware that he had never met Hitchcock. Despite all those appearances, not once. His strength, it turned out, was suspense. So was concealing suffering. Fine, 1960, Twilight Zone, took things a step farther. The Purple Testament, a Universe A captain in World War II witnessing soldiers die. Their faces begin to glow one by one. Prior to death, York gave a strong performance. Then a true tragedy occurred. His director and co-star perished in an aircraft crash the day it broadcast. One fatality. The broadcast continued. Though once more, the distinction between fact and fiction became hazy. During 1961, York shot on a Route 66 episode. It was too much like his life. A figure residing in suffering, persevering. He kept a flatboard in his trailer by this point so he could lie on it. In between takes, he was in pain while he worked, scripted or not. In 1964, York was among the more than 200 actors vying for the Bewitched Darrin Stevens part. The catch: he had to mimic Elizabeth Montgomery's famous mid-dialogue nose twitch. Although the majority, York captured the scene so flawlessly that the producer didn't fumble it or overplay it. William Asher made a snap decision. He immediately got the part. However, at that moment, York made a decision that would ruin his life. He was honest. He acknowledged that he had suffered a serious back injury while filming. They came to Kaduras back twisted while he attempted to assist in lifting a railroad hand car that moved. Instead of substituting, the studio actually went above and above for him. They constructed a covert 15-degree York may casually lean on the set's leaning wall. They shifted to the ground floor for his dressing room. They even made a chair that supports the spine in a unique way. Everyone believed, although his honesty was admirable. The wound never went away, expanding. By 1965's second season, each morning began with 15 tablets, not vit. These were powerful muscle relaxants, demoralizers, and percotants. They weren't even approved by the FDA because they were so new. Each and every word he spoke on through a fog of artificial survival. The camera emerged. Directors William Asher and in the editing room, Richard Michaels frequently spent hours smoothing down his slurred takes. But no amount of post-production episodes events could be concealed by the production. Arvar is represented by the letter A as he stated, in the midst of a scene, "What have you done, Samantha?" York's legs failed him. He fell into a bookshelves with a thump, his lines unbroken. The video was so frightening that studio executives were afraid Variety, which was already looking for evidence of York's health, would find out. The official narrative, the actual video, exhaustion, is kept in a vault. Until a former crew member discreetly sold it to entertainment in 2003. Historians, however, when the manufacturers repaired the harm, another person discreetly hid him. Endora Agnes Moorehead, with her dramatic and stern glares on TV, his unusual ally was disdained. In the background, she became his. She used phony sleeves, spell props, and costumes to conceal prescription bottles. Occasionally, she would disguise them as portion of a scenario. York would take something from her palm that appeared to be a miraculous ingredient, but it was actually a muscle relaxant. When he was filming Nobody's Perfect in 1966, his role was changed into a canine. He swallowed 23 medications that day. His yelling deliverer grew so perplexed that nobody could tell if he was slipping or acting. The Moorehead later admitted to her biographer that she felt guilty about it. Her own son passed away in conflict. Assisting York turned to become a means of reclaiming motherhood. She recorded every medication, mood change, and fall is recorded in a secret journal that only appeared years later. Everything ultimately fell apart in 1967. While Samantha's good news, a Pratt falling onto a wooden floor, was part of the plot. Slipping on a banana peel and landing on the floor, York paused. His back was unable to breathe. Despite the beginning medics warning not to push, Asher felt the strain of the threat became genuine due to production delays. Dick was waiting with his sergeant. One mistake move and someone would take York's place. York pulled the trick. The disc slipped. He felt his sciatic nerves shriek. He yelled for 20 minutes without stopping. Like a shattered doll, they carried him off the set. For the remaining episodes, Darrin was always traveling for work. Samantha needed to create a brand new magical explanations for his absence, each one more absurd than the one before. The admirers began to take note. Why didn't she simply give him a zap in return? Then, in 1968, The Final Straw and Samantha's French Pastry are 2 episodes. York was suffering from pneumonia. Despite the temperature reaching 104, he had to scale 8 feet of scaffolding while carrying pies for a climactic slapstick. York didn't want to give the rumor that Sargent was being prepared to take over the reins. He climbed up, foregoing a chute to roll away. He blacked out halfway through. Fell into a pile of phony pies. Face down, unaware, he was hurried to Cedars-Sinai. After spending 6 days in the hospital, William Asher discovered a man bound in wires, with tears streaming down his cheeks, hardly breathing. York raised his head. "Bill, I can't fake it anymore," he muttered. "The enchantment has vanished. It ended just like that. No grand exit, no farewell party. A private for 10 years, the agreement prohibited him from talking about his addiction in public. They used a double to reshoot the pie scene. His last appearance in an episode aired silently on the 25th of March 1968, Bewitched. He departed in March 1969, wishing that the worst was over. He was embraced by Chicago, and he inherited Dick. York was set to make a victorious comeback in The Wind when he took the stage. He brought 10 years off worth of suffering, both mental and bodily. However, that suffering didn't just stay put, it ate him up. As he said the courtroom's most impactful word speech, his back literally gave out. The viewers believed it to be a component of the act, until the curtain fell in disarray and York started to crawl across the floor. That one instant was erased.